I never thought a cup of coffee could change everything. That Tuesday, as I sat in the cafe, my life was about to take a turn. There he was, Mark, sitting across from me. A stranger, yet there was something oddly familiar about him. He had this spark in his eyes, the kind that could light up a room or, in my case, set a life ablaze. "Rough day?" he asked, noticing my furrowed brow. I laughed, brushing off the question. "Isn't it always?" And just like that, we started talking. It was easy, effortless. Mark had a way of pulling words out of me, making me forget the mundane world I belonged to. Later that evening, I found myself thinking about him, his laugh, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help it. I needed to see him again. So, I did what I never thought I was capable of. I lied to John, my husband. "Working late," I said. The lie tasted bitter, but the excitement of seeing Mark again was too tempting. Our next meeting was nothing short of electric. We met at a secluded hotel, away from prying eyes. That night, as I lay in Mark's arms, I felt alive, vibrant, something I hadn't felt in years. It was wrong, so wrong, but it felt right in a way I couldn't explain. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself spinning a web of lies. Each excuse to meet Mark became more elaborate. I was losing myself in this affair, but I didn't want to stop. The thrill was addictive. One evening, John, with his ever-so-caring heart, surprised me with a necklace. It was beautiful, expensive, and a stark reminder of the life I was betraying. "I love you," he said, his eyes filled with the sincerity I once cherished. That moment, guilt knotted me, but it was quickly overshadowed by my longing for Mark. Looking back, I realized how I was swept away in a current too strong to resist. I was living a double life, torn between the comfort of my family and the exhilaration of the unknown. Little did I know, the choices I made in those fleeting moments were about to unravel the very fabric of my existence. There it was again, that gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. Guilt. Every time I looked at John, my heart sank a little. But then, there was Mark, like a bright light in a dim room, and I just couldn't stay away. I tried to shake off the guilt, telling myself life's too short for what-ifs. One Thursday, I totally messed up. My daughter, Lily, had her school play. She was the lead, and she'd been talking about it for weeks. But Mark called, said he had something special planned. I thought I could juggle both. Spoiler alert. I couldn't. By the time I remembered the play, it was over. Lily was heartbroken, and John, he just didn't understand how I could forget. "Work," I mumbled, but the lie felt heavier this time. That weekend, Mark whisked me away to some fancy hotel out of town. It was like a scene from a movie, all luxury and no strings attached. I was lost in this bubble, far away from the reality of school plays and disappointed families. Mark had this power, you know? He made everything else fade away. But then reality hit, hard. John found a receipt from the hotel. It was just lying there, a careless mistake. He confronted me with it, his face a mix of confusion and concern. "A work conference," I blurted out. It sounded hollow even to my ears, but John, he just nodded. I could see the doubt in his eyes, though. That look haunted me. The lies were piling up, one on top of the other. I was in deep, too deep. Every time I was with Mark, it was like an escape, but every lie I told John, every disappointed look from my kids, it was like a weight, dragging me down. I was living two lies, and both were crumbling. I couldn't keep up with my own stories, and the worst part? I didn't know if I wanted to stop. "Mom, weren't you supposed to be at work today?" Danny's voice was sharp, tinged with confusion. There he stood, in the middle of the town square, his eyes boring into mine. I had told John and the kids I had a meeting, but here I was, about to have lunch with Mark. My heart raced. I stumbled over my words, muttering something about a last-minute cancellation. Danny didn't look convinced. I could see the doubt in his eyes, the same doubt I'd seen in John's. It was getting harder to keep my story straight. As I walked away from Danny, I felt a chasm widening between us. It was like watching my family life slip through my fingers, but I was too caught up in the thrill of the affair to stop. Mark was like a drug, intoxicating and addictive. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't help myself. The risks I was taking became more daring, meeting Mark in broad daylight, in places where anyone could see us. Meanwhile, John, my ever-dutiful husband, had his own plans. I didn't know it then, but he was watching me. Not in a creepy, stalkerish way, but he was paying attention, noticing the late nights, the missed family events, my nervousness. He was putting the pieces together, pieces I'd carelessly left scattered. One day, I came home to find John unusually quiet. He was always the talkative one, but that day, there was a silence that hung heavy in the air. It should have been a warning sign, a red flag waving right in front of my face, but I was too wrapped up in my own world. The truth was, John had hired a private investigator. Yes, you heard that right. A private eye, like in those old detective movies. He wanted proof, something concrete to confront me with. I had no idea, going about my days, growing bolder with Mark, while a stranger was documenting my every move. Looking back, I can see how reckless I had become. It was like I was two different people. One, a mother and wife, entangled in the mundane routines of family life. The other, a woman consumed by passion, living a secret life that was spiraling out of control. Each lie I told, every sneaky encounter with Mark, was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. I was building a house of cards on a foundation of deceit, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. I remember planning our anniversary like it was some kind of redemption act. A beautiful dinner at our favorite restaurant, the one where John proposed. I thought maybe, just maybe, it could smooth over the growing cracks in our marriage. Deep down, I knew it was more about easing my own guilt than anything else. The night was perfect, or at least it seemed that way. Candlelight, soft music, John's favorite wine. I was playing the part of the devoted wife, but inside, I was a mess. Every time I looked into John's eyes, I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies. Little did I know, as we clinked glasses and reminisced about old times, a private investigator was snapping photos of me and Mark from earlier that day. The evidence of my betrayal, caught on camera, ready to shatter the fragile illusion of our happy marriage. The next day, the bomb dropped. John, usually so calm and composed, confronted me with the PICE report. Photos, dates, times, it was all there in black and white. His face was a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. I could see the man I loved breaking before my eyes. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The room felt like it was spinning. I wanted to lie, to deny everything, but the truth was there, staring us both in the face. I broke down, confessing to the affair. Tears, apologies, pleas, I spilled everything. I begged him not to leave, to give me another chance. I was desperate, not just to save my marriage, but to save myself from the mess I'd created. John just stood there, silent. I could see the internal struggle, the war between his love for me and the betrayal he felt. It was like watching someone trying to piece together a shattered vase, knowing it would never be the same again. That night, the walls of our home felt like they were closing in on me. The happy memories tainted, the future uncertain. I had laid bare the worst part of myself, and the fallout was just beginning. It was the moment everything changed, the point of no return. Our once happy life, now a tangled web of lies and heartache, and it was all my doing. The sound of the door closing behind John and the kids echoed through the house like a final verdict. Empty. That's what the place felt like without them. I tried calling, texting, but it was like I was talking to a brick wall. No response, nothing. Just silence and the overwhelming feeling of being alone. In desperation, I turned to Mark. He had been my escape, my secret haven, but now even that was crumbling. I called him, needing to hear a friendly voice, someone who cared. But the Mark one met on the phone was not the Mark one knew. His voice was distant, careful, like he was talking to a stranger. "Maybe we should lay low for a while," he said. Lay low? Those words hit me like a punch. I was losing everything, and now, even Mark was pulling away. It dawned on me then, the gravity of what I had done, and how little Mark was willing to stand by me. The realization stung. All those moments, the risks I took, the lies I spun. They were for a relationship that was as shallow as a puddle. Mark was in it for the fun, the thrill. But when things got real, when my world started falling apart, he was backing off. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. The laughter, the secrecy, the stolen moments, they all seemed so frivolous now. I had traded my family's love for a fleeting fantasy. And for what? A man who couldn't even stand by me during the storm. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that screams in your ears. Everywhere I looked, I saw remnants of my old life. Pictures of happier times, John's jacket on the chair, the kids' toys spattered around. It was a stark reminder of what I had lost. My family, my home, my sense of self. All because I chased an illusion, a mirage that vanished when reality hit. It was in those long, lonely nights that the full weight of my actions hit me. I was alone, truly alone, and the only person I had to blame was myself. The cost of my choices was more than I ever imagined, and the price was my family. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. That's what I thought, staring at the pregnancy test. Positive. My heart sank. Who was the father? John or Mark? I was spinning, lost in a sea of what-ifs and maybes. Taking a deep breath, I decided to tell Mark. Part of me hoped this news would change things, maybe even bring us closer. How naive I was. We met at the same cafe where it all began, the irony not lost on me. His reaction? It was like watching a mask fall off. I never wanted this, he said, his words cold and final. There was no comfort, no support. Just a blunt rejection. It felt like another piece of my world crumbling away. But as I walked away from Mark, something shifted inside me. I was going to keep the baby. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a way back to John, a chance to fix what I had broken. A foolish hope, but hope nonetheless. I went to John, my heart in my throat. I'm pregnant, I blurted out, the words heavy with desperation. But John, his face unreadable, just shook his head. I can't do this anymore, Susan. His voice was steady, but I could hear the pain behind it. He wanted a divorce, full custody of our kids. It was like a door slamming shut, loud and final. Sitting alone in the house, the reality of my situation hit me. Pregnant, soon to be divorced, and utterly alone. The choices I had made, one after another, had led me here. I had chased a fantasy with Mark, a fleeting thrill, and now I was paying the price. The nights grew longer, each one a reminder of the life I had lost. I would lie awake, my hand on my belly, thinking about the baby. A part of me, a new life, growing inside me. It was terrifying and beautiful all at once. I thought about John and the kids, the laughter and love that once filled our home. Now, all that was left were echoes of a happier time, a reminder of what could have been. I realized then that life doesn't pause for regret. It moves on, relentless and unforgiving. I had made my choices, and now I had to live with them. The future was uncertain, scary even. But there was a glimmer of something new, a possibility of redemption in the form of a new life. Maybe, just maybe, this baby was a chance for me to start over, to rebuild from the ruins of my own making. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. The thing about hitting rock bottom is you find out who your real friends are. Or, in my case, how few I had left. One by one, they drifted away, like leaves in the autumn wind. Calls went unanswered, invitations stopped coming. Even my own family, the people who'd stood by me through thick and thin, they couldn't look me in the eye. I was alone, and I couldn't blame anyone but myself. Work wasn't any better, whispers followed me down the hallways, eyes averted when I passed by. I was the subject of office gossip, the cautionary tale of what not to become. I tried to keep my head high, focus on my job, but the stares, the silence around the water cooler, it was suffocating. Then there was the move. From our spacious, warm family home to a tiny apartment that felt more like a box than a home. Each box I unpacked was a reminder of what I'd lost. The family photos, the kids' artwork, they were like jabs to my already bruised heart. The walls were bare, the rooms echoed with the sound of my own footsteps. It was a stark, lonely new reality. In the midst of all this, my health started taking a hit. Sleepless nights, skipped meals, the stress and isolation were wearing me down. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. My eyes had lost their sparkle, my skin its glow. I was a shadow of the person I used to be, worn down by the consequences of my own actions. Amidst this, I tried reaching out to my kids. I needed to see them, to explain, to apologize. But every attempt was met with silence or a flat-out refusal. It was like a knife twisting in my heart. The pain of their rejection was almost physical. I missed them terribly, their laughter, their chatter, the way they'd run to me when I got home. Now, the silence of the apartment was a constant reminder of their absence. This was my life now, a series of losses, a chain of rejections. I was learning the hard way that some mistakes carry a price heavier than you can ever imagine. The road I had chosen, the decisions I had made, had led me here, to this lonely, empty place. And the hardest part? Knowing I had no one to blame but myself. The call came on a rainy Tuesday. It was my sister, her voice shaky. "Mom's in the hospital." "It's serious." I hadn't spoken to my mom in years, our last conversation ending in a heated argument. But hearing she was ill, all the anger and pride melted away. I needed to see her, to make things right. The hospital was a blur of white walls and hushed voices. There she was, frail and pale, a shadow of the strong woman who raised me. Sitting beside her, holding her hand, I poured out my heart. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything." Tears streamed down my face, but she was too weak to speak. I hoped she could hear me, understand my regret. I visited every day, clinging to the hope of reconciliation. But time was cruel. Mom passed away before we could truly mend our bridges. I was left with a gaping wound, filled with words left unsaid, apologies never fully accepted. The funeral was another punch to the gut. My family, still reeling from my recent actions, kept their distance. Their cold glares were louder than any words of comfort. I stood there, amidst the people who were supposed to be my support system, feeling more isolated than ever. Financial troubles soon followed, legal fees from the divorce, the cost of living alone, it was all piling up. I found myself sifting through my jewelry, the expensive necklace John had given me, the earrings from happier birthdays. One by one, I sold them, each piece another chip off the life I once knew. This was my reality now. I was a woman who had lost her family, her dignity, and now, even the remnants of a past life. The pieces of jewelry, once symbols of love and celebration, were now just means to an end. I was paying for my mistakes, not just emotionally, but in every aspect of my life. I always thought Lisa, my best friend since high school, was my rock. Turns out, even rocks can crumble. We were having coffee when she dropped the bomb. "I knew about you and Mark," she said, her voice trembling. "I just couldn't believe you'd do something like that." Her words stunned more than any judgmental glance ever did. Betrayal, disappointment, it was all there in her eyes. I tried to explain, to apologize, but the damage was done. She walked away, leaving me with my cup of coffee and a heart full of regret. Feeling like the world was against me, I started therapy. It was my last resort, a place to spill my guilt and grief. The sessions were tough, a mirror reflecting my mistakes and pains. But they also offered a glimmer of hope, a chance to understand myself, to grow beyond the chaos I created. In the midst of this turmoil, my baby girl was born. Holding her for the first time was a mix of indescribable joy and overwhelming sadness. Her tiny fingers, her soft cries, she was perfect. But the joy of her arrival was shadowed by the absence of her father, her siblings. I was a mother again, yet more alone than ever. I reached out to John, a faint hope flickering in my heart. "She's your daughter too," I said over the phone, my voice breaking. But his answer was a firm no. He and the kids wouldn't be a part of her life. That conversation sealed the deal on our family split. It was final, irrevocable. One day, I saw them in town, John and our children. They looked happy, laughing and joking. The sight was a punch in the gut. They had moved on, found a way to live without me. I stood there, holding my baby girl, feeling a profound sense of loss. They were a family, and I was an outsider, looking in. Life had become a series of harsh realities. My best friend gone, my family a distant memory, and here I was, a single mother trying to piece together a life for my daughter and me. The world I knew had crumbled, and all I had left was the love for my baby and the hope that someday, things might get better. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. I came home one evening to a busted door and a ransacked apartment. My heart sank as I looked around the few valuables I had left, gone. My grandmother's ring, the laptop I used for work, even some cash I had stashed away, all stolen. It felt like a cruel joke, the universe kicking me when I was already down. Out of necessity, I picked up a second job. My days and nights blurred into a relentless cycle of work, care for my baby, and sleepless nights. The exhaustion was bone deep, but I had a little mouth to feed, a little life, depending on me. I was running on fumes, fueled by sheer determination and motherly love. One day, in the rare moment I had to myself, I saw Mark. He was with another woman, laughing just like he used to with me. That scene, so ordinary yet so piercing, made it clear I was a chapter in his life that he had firmly closed. There was no going back, no do-overs. He had moved on, and I was still stuck in the rubble of the life I had once had. Then, my baby girl fell ill. It started as a fever, but quickly worsened. I was frantic, juggling work and rushing her to the doctor. The medical bills piled up, each one a weight added to my already burdened shoulders. Watching her in that hospital bed, so small and fragile, I felt helpless and scared. This was not the life I had envisioned for her, for us. The final blow came unceremoniously, a letter in the mail. My divorce was finalized. John had full custody of our other children. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I had lost everything: my marriage, my family, and now, legally, my children. I was officially alone, a single mother to a sick child, with a life I never imagined I would have. Sitting in the dim light of my bare apartment, holding the letter, I realized the full extent of my downfall. The choices I had made, the paths I had taken, had led me here. I was paying the price for my actions, a price that was more than I ever bargained for.